Today we're going to be discussing negative commands, so how to tell someone not to do something. Before we move on to our negative commands though, let's do a quick review of our normal command formation, our positive commands. So remember, with a non-reflexive command, we only have two steps. We're going to drop the subject pronoun off of our sentence, and then if our subject pronoun was to, and we have an ER verb, then we have to drop the S off of the end of the verb. Only in those two cases are we going to worry about that S, and then we're done. So for example, if we have the sentence, tu laves le chien, so you are washing the dog, and we want to turn this into a command. We want to tell you, wash the dog. First thing we do, drop our subject, get rid of that tu. Since that was a tu, and lave is an ER verb, then we have to drop the S off the end of lave. And what we're left with is our command. Wash the dog. Lave le chien. A positive reflexive command is very similar. Here we just have two extra steps. We're going to drop our subject pronoun. We're going to drop the S off the end of the verb if it's a to form of an ER verb. So the exact same thing that we just did. But then we have to think. We're going to replace our reflexive pronoun with the stressed pronoun. And then we're going to flip it with the verb and connect them both with a hyphen. So if I take my original sentence about washing the dog, well, it can't be reflexive because dogs don't wash themselves, unfortunately. But if we change our object, so now you are washing your own hands. Tu te laves les mains. Now it's a reflexive sentence. We're going to do our first two steps the exact same way, dropping our subject pronoun, dropping the S off of our verb. We're going to find our reflexive pronoun, our te, and we're going to replace it with the stressed pronoun. Remember that te will always become toi. Nous and vous stay the same. Reflexive pronoun, nous and vous, and stressed pronoun is still nous and vous. The only thing we have left to do, we're going to flip our verb and our stressed pronoun so that our verb comes first, and connect them together with a hyphen. Lave-toi les mains. So look at your practice sheet and take a few minutes to complete activity A. So you are given, in this case, multiple command forms. Choose which one of them makes the most sense given that context. Before we can worry about negative commands, let's do a quick review of how we negate sentences. So we always negate a sentence by adding a ne pas around the verb, or another negative phrase. It doesn't actually matter if it's ne rien, ne jamais, ne pas encore. Any of those other negative phrases work the exact same way. We start with a ne, then we have our verb, and then whatever our final chunk of that negative phrase is, in most cases, pas. Remember that we have to include all the parts of the verb. So when we're looking at things like reflexive verbs, we're going to include our reflexive pronoun in between the ne and the pas. So you'll have a ne reflexive pronoun verb pas. Remember that we also have to contract the ne into n apostrophe when necessary. This will never be the case in a reflexive because none of our reflexive pronouns begin with a vowel. However, since we are looking at both reflexive and non-reflexive, there are plenty of verbs that begin with vowels, so we've got to be a little bit careful with these. Make sure that you're paying attention to all those little itty-bitty details. So for example, the sentence, je me lave les mains, so I'm washing my hands. If we want to say I'm not washing my hands, we find the verb me lave and stick our ne pas around the entire thing. Je ne me lave pas les mains. So therefore, to negate non-reflexive commands, we're going to do the exact same thing. All we have to do is add the ne and the pas or another negative phrase around our verb. So our first step, we drop our subject pronoun. If it's a to form of an ER verb, we'll drop the final S. And the only other thing we have to worry about is adding a ne pas around the verb. There's no difference between negating non-reflexive commands and negating a typical sentence. So let's look at an example. If we have nous ne lavons pas le chien, so we are not washing the dog. We drop our subject pronoun. It's not a to form of a verb, so we skip that part. And we already have a ne pas, so we're done. So if we want to go from we are not washing the dog, nous ne lavons pas le chien, to let's not wash the dog, ne lavons pas le chien. If we were to start off with a sentence in the positive and we want to argue with it, okay, so for example, if we were going to tell someone, you are washing the dog, okay, vous lavez le chien, and we want to say, stop that, don't wash the dog. Drop our subject pronoun. Since we had vous, that is not a to form, so we skip step 2. And we add our ne pas around the verb. Ne lavez pas le chien. Don't wash the dog. Stop it. Quit cleaning that poor dog. With a reflexive command, we're actually going to do the exact same thing. Negating reflexive commands is just like negating non-reflexive commands. The thing that makes negating reflexive commands tricky is that we're going to ignore all of those rules we just learned about forming reflexive commands in the first place. We're going to form these the exact same way that you would form a regular sentence, and then just negate the sentence. So we actually have the exact same 3 steps for negating reflexive commands and non-reflexive commands. We drop our subject pronoun, drop the S off the end of a to form of an ER verb, and add ne pas around the verb. That whole reflexive pronoun and distressed pronoun and flipping around and connecting with hyphens, when it's a negative command, we completely ignore that entire thing. That's only used in a positive reflexive command, where we're telling someone, do something to yourself. If we're saying, don't do something to yourself, we're going to completely ignore it. So let's run through some examples. If we have the sentence, we are washing our hands, nous nous lavons les mains, we're going to drop our subject pronoun. Our original subject was nous, so it's not a to form, so we skip step 2. And then we just add a ne pas around the verb. Ne nous lavons pas les mains. Simple. Easy peasy. There's nothing else that we have to change. Let's look at another one. Slightly more complicated because this one is tu. So we have tu te laves les cheveux. So you are washing your hair. We're going to drop our subject pronoun. Since that was a to form and lave is still an ER verb, we'll drop that S. And we'll add a ne pas around the entire verb. Ne te lave pas les cheveux. Alright, so take a few minutes and try to complete activity B on your practice worksheet. So you're given a sentence, okay, where you start off with your subject, and then you're given a verb that you want to command that person to do. Okay, pay careful attention. Some of the verbs given to you are in the positive, and some of them are in the negative.